Hello there everyone and welcome back to another Muunilinst mock update video, and this is the penultimate episode, the last episode before the finale. So 2 more episodes with this one and the finale. The Muunilinst mock update series is almost over, and this episode is one of the most exciting ones yet because I complete the control center that sits on top of the base of the tower that I built a couple episodes ago, so I expand on that a little bit. I add to the front of the tower, and I work on the command center that sits on top, and by the end of this episode we almost have a fully completed tower. So it's a very exciting episode, and without any further ado, let's get started. And welcome back to what I'm calling the final episode before the finale. So the things I'm going to plan on getting done this episode is primarily the command center, which is going to be a lot of work, so that's going to be the focus. And then for the finale, of course, I'll be kind of finishing up that building and kind of touching up a few things throughout the whole mock and talking a lot about figures as well. For this episode, you can see already what I've done. I didn't really point this out last episode, but I did start to do a little bit of the structure on the back side over there, and then I just now put in all of the inverted pieces on both sides. I think they're the 1x3 or 2x3 inverted pieces. Essentially what that's going to do is that's where the actual command center is going to be set on top of. So I'm going to be creating it separately and then placing it or connecting it on top of these inverted slopes that I've got on here. So that's essentially what's going to happen for this episode, is the command center, and hopefully when I get done with it, it'll be looking pretty good. It'll be a little bit of a challenge just from a structural standpoint, and we're also running low on pieces per usual once we get to this stage of large-scale mocks. But I've kind of got an idea of what I want to do for the command center up top, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. But I think the first thing I'm actually going to do is work on this and getting rid, because I got some parts in, getting rid of this light gray portion and switching it to dark gray, and then doing the same for the other side. So I think that's what I'm going to work on first, and should be a pretty exciting episode, because by the end of this episode the tower should be almost complete, which will be very exciting. So let's go ahead and get started, and of course this is where the fun begins. Alright guys, so I've been working a lot on the control center, and I've been working on it on the floor because it's a separate piece and I don't really have room to work on it on top. I'm pretty much building it here down on the ground so then I can lift it up and place it on top of the tower. So I was going to update you guys on each like small incremental step, but I decided to skip that because I just was in the mood and in the zone. I just kept going for it. So essentially I've built up this one flat wall right here with some masonry and dark bluish gray 1x4s, 1x2s, and 1x1s, trying to keep it a very similar design to the rest of the tower, and also trying to use pieces that I have a decent amount of. All the stuff you've heard me say before in terms of large-scale mock building. So that's essentially what I've got here. Now the bottom is just a bunch of plates and then a couple of angled plates on each side to kind of round it and somewhat match up with the tower itself. Another thing that I did on the back side here, as I swing it around, is I did slope it, so it is going to have kind of that slope look. It's going to be a very similar look to the tower itself on the back side, if you recall. So I thought that was interesting. And then there's just kind of the base. It's nothing really too interesting, just a bunch of plates. And the thing about this is it also needs to overhang slightly over the tower on the back end. I'll show you guys when I put this thing up on top. So it needs to be slightly larger than the back of the tower itself. Another thing I started to do was work on this front section. I've got a droid down there to kind of show you guys what I was thinking. So essentially on the tower itself, you've got the control center, and then you've got the trans red windows, and they're kind of indented a little bit. So that's what I've partially done here with the slopes. Gone in and indented it on both sides, so the control center almost looks like it goes into the rest of the tower itself. Hopefully I'll be able to get a better look at it once I am able to attach this onto the rest of the tower. Here's a droid right here. I'll probably have some sort of wall, probably just be black tiles, so that when you look at it from afar at the convention, just looks like it kind of goes back for a while, even though it'll just be black tiles. And then down over here, there's a little bit of a layer where I'll probably put some control panels and things like that and have a few droids working here. So then when you're looking at the mock from kind of far away, you'll see the red windows, and then you'll be able to see inside, you'll see some droids kind of working on like at the command center and kind of all that cool stuff and details. So essentially I've just started on some of that stuff. but this is the height that I want it to be. So that's partly why I just kind of built it up to show you guys how tall I want this thing to be. So it's actually pretty big, a little larger than I thought. I need this to be pretty large because otherwise it's going to look kind of off if this thing is really small. The dimensions of the tower, it's just not going to look appropriate or proportionally accurate if this top command center isn't pretty large, substantially large. So that's why I made it this tall. Now the hard part is going to be filling this in. The next thing I'm going to work on is kind of this control room in here with the red windows. And then eventually you can also see up here I've got these inverted. I'll need to switch those out. If I can find any more dark bluish gray slopes, I've used pretty much all of them on the front of the battlefield of Muunilinst, if you recall. So I'm going to have to figure something else out on that end. But essentially I also need to cover this part up here, and then I need to figure out what I'm doing on the back side. So there's a lot of stuff, same with the tower, where I get the initial design down, but then I got to figure out how am I going to fill in a lot of the gaps. But first off, I'm going to worry about this stuff up here so I can make it as detailed as possible with the red windows and maybe a little bit of control center. It won't be too in-depth because you're not really going to see inside too much. You'll just have some control panels and probably droids walking about. But here's what I've got so far for the control center, and again this will place on top of the tower, but I got to finish this section first. So I'm gonna get back to work and I'll update you guys once I have some more progress. Alright, here's an update on the control center. I got a lot of trans red pieces in and was able to work on this front section with the glass, but of course I underestimated and did not order enough dark red or just red translucent pieces. So of course we all know what happens when you don't have enough pieces. This has happened throughout most and a lot of the series is battle damage. So I had to do battle damage, trust me. I did not want to do any battle damage on this portion of the tower. I wanted it to be nice and clean and good looking, but I did not have enough pieces, and I've spent so much money on this MOC that I can't really afford to order a whole bunch more trans red pieces, so I just added in some battle damage. So hopefully you guys understand there's not really much I could do. So here is some battle damage on the front. I had two little holes there with some different studs and 1x1s to kind of replicate a destroyed section right there for the control center. As I move it around this way, you can see up here I've got some studs and things like that along over here as well. So just two openings, and the rest is covered with the trans red glass pieces, so hopefully that's alright, but again, didn't really have much of an option there. Also, you can see in the back I did end up adding in all those tiles I was speaking about. So I said instead of doing a wall, I wanted to add just a section, backdrop of black tiles. There are a bunch of 2x4 tiles back there, just to make it like a backdrop and seem like it goes back farther. So when you look at it from far away at the convention, it'll just kind of give it some almost infinite depth where it just looks like it goes on. And there's no flat wall to kind of cover it, so it just looks interesting, gives it a little bit more of a backdrop so that it looks like there's more going on back there than just a flat wall. It's also a little hard to see, but I did start to add in some control panels and things like that because I wanted to do a whole interior, but then I realized after putting the glass up that you're not even going to see any of this stuff in here, so I'm just going to leave it plain. Well, I'll keep the stuff in there, but I won't, as I knock something down. I'll keep the control panels I have in there right now, but I was building it and I was like, you're not even going to see any of this. So why would I put in a lot of resources into the command, inside of this building to make an interior when you're not even going to see it? So as you can see from back over here, as I get things into focus, you're not really going to see what's inside of there, so I'm just going to leave it as it is, which I think is fine because why would I spend time and resources when you're not even going to see it, and because I could use those resources elsewhere in the MOC. So that was my thought process through there, but here's kind of the front section of the building. So now that I have the window piece there for the control center completed, I then needed to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of this. One thing I did do is I actually made this a couple rows smaller because I had it really, really tall and I was looking at the dimensions, comparing it to the rest of the tower, and it just didn't work in my opinion. It was just a little bit too large, so I did make this a little smaller, but I think it's going to fit a lot better proportion-wise once I get it put on top of what I have so far for the tower. But the big thing here are these inverted pieces and the slope on the side. So as you can see right here, also when in regards to the reference photos, when I was looking, there was definitely some indented things going on right here, particularly on top of the command center. It seemed to go up, and the immediate first thing I thought of when looking at the reference photos was inverted slopes. So as you can see, I'm using some light gray ones right there because I can't find any more inverted slopes in the dark bluish gray because I've used all of them on the battlefield, so I gotta figure something out for that. But that is the general idea when looking at it from the side. I really want to get this kind of indented look and give it some depth. So now that I've got that kind of figured out with the inverted slopes, I'm gonna have to try to find, or I guess I might have to order some more dark bluish gray inverted slopes there. So that's kind of the angle. So I've got the angle down, and it might not be the best over here, but once I get this put on top of the rest of the tower, you'll see what I'm going for. So the next step here that I'm gonna work on is completing this front section of the command center. So this whole gap up here in the front, I need to complete that gap and cover that in and get that complete. So sorry this is a little rough. This command center is it's bigger than I was, what I thought it was going to be. So it's getting a little hard to film because I can't put it on top of the rest of the tower until I complete this whole section. So I need to just complete this and then put it on top of the tower so you guys will get a better look at it. But for now, I'm going to complete this front section right here. I just wanted to update you guys and let you know what I did for the window section, and then also this kind of inverted sloped in angle on the side and what that looks like, because I do think this whole transition from this part to this section up here is really, really important for the overall look of the command center. So I really wanted to get that down. So I'm gonna go ahead and get back to work and hopefully figure out some more solutions and update you guys once I have some more progress. All right guys, so I've worked more on the control center here, and what I've done is the top side here is now built out so there's no more gaps in it. And then if I go ahead and scooch this to the back side of the control center, I've also kind of started to build this part up here. You can see there's still a little gap that I need to fix, but essentially this part was really hard because I had a massive gap here in the back, if you recall, and I didn't really know what to do because I didn't really know what to cover it with because I didn't have enough slopes to go all the way across. So I found some of these large tile panel pieces that I had, but I only had 4, so I was only able to cover a couple sides there. And then the middle, I just used snot and pretty much angled it in the same kind of angle and direction that I had these other panels in, so they're all kind of sloped up thatwards. And the unfortunate part is every time I move, it kind of comes undone a little bit, just because these are very heavy pieces and it was hard to support things at an angle from the inside of the build structurally. So they do kind of get knocked down and a little not entirely angled properly. So essentially once I get this on top of the tower, there'll be some more kind of moving around things and making sure they're actually all lined up. So these 2 things are kind of supposed to be lined up together, but now the back is filled out for the most part, besides a few finishing touches. And the roof is now covered with plates. One thing I'm kind of considering is if I want to, because originally I did want to add some details to the top of the control center. So in the actual Battle of Muunilinst, there seems to be some kind of radio antennas and some maybe power boxes and other things on top of the tower. And I do want to see if I can add that, but at this point in time, I really just need to get all the major details done first. So I need to make sure this fits on top of the tower, that it's structurally stable. I need to do the overnight test, leave it there overnight and make sure it's not going to fall off during that time period. So I need to get all the major stuff out of the way first. But I would like to add some details on top. We'll see if I get around to it. But essentially, again, still waiting on an order for some dark bluish gray inverted slopes, so those will be fixed. Don't worry about that. And then, of course, just kind of touching up a few things here and there on the back side, like I mentioned earlier with some of the angles. But everything is covered, and I've got the shape down to what I want it to be. Now is the ultimate test where I put this on top of what I have of the tower and hope it stays. So that should be fun. I'm gonna have to add in some more structural stuff to make sure it's not gonna fall off, but all right, let's see if this works. Here's the inside of the tower here, or on the back side of the build. I started to add in some more Technic because I needed something to set this on, because before it was just set on top of these inverted slopes up there, and that just, I didn't feel confident enough that that would hold. So I did build this little Technic kind of square. Technic, always good if you want to kind of give some stuff some good structure. For the Siege of Mandalore MOC, I used a lot of Technic to hold up the walkways that I featured in that MOC in the back of the build. I built this whole Technic structure for everything to sit on top of, because you can reinforce Technic with all the pins and everything like that. It makes it a lot stronger and sturdier. And then I've got some of these other Technic pieces that kind of can go at an angle, which actually allows it to give you some more flexibility on where you want it to place. So instead of it kind of lining up here and there, I was able to angle it down so it kind of goes in the middle between the 2 walls to give it some more structure, and then it's just hooked into kind of this superstructure down here that I've got. It's a big mess, but it's working, and that's all that really matters right now, is as long as it holds, you're not going to see anything inside of here. So this is what I've got, and I'll be able to hopefully, if everything goes well, set the tower or the control center on top of this, so it'll have 3 points of resting, or I guess 4 if you count 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I don't know if it'll rest on that or not, so I'm not counting that yet, but hopefully we'll have 4 points for it to just rest on, plus the 2 over here, so hopefully it all works out. I'm kind of procrastinating because I'm a little nervous to put it on top, but let's go ahead and try it. Alright guys, so one big thing that I did work on was the front of this tower, the base of the tower. This was completely left open the last time you saw it, but now I've got all this section in dark gray on both sides now with those kind of curved slope pieces. As you can see, they're not quite perfectly lined up yet. There's still a little bit of finessing I need to do, but for now you can see the general idea of how it just kind of goes from this flat wall, using these slopes to transition into the wall up front here. I kind of went through a few design thoughts and process on what to do for this front section because I didn't want it to just be a plain wall, kind of same problem that I went through a few episodes ago with this side right here, but I didn't want to do any battle damage due to how much structure I have in there that's going to support the command center. I couldn't really afford to do any battle damage elements, so you'll see I added in a little bit of sand green down there to kind of help transition from this platform and right there. It kind of feels like it's all one piece now because at first I didn't have any sand green. Felt a little off, so I am glad I added that in there. I think that just helps transition from the cannon platform and the base of the tower and the base of the cannon platform up to the main tower. So otherwise I went with the same exact design that I did for the command center actually, because I didn't want to do just all plain 1x4s and 1x2 bricks, which I did do on this side, but I felt for this front part it would be way too plain, so I did actually add in some masonry, as you can see right there. So it's actually a mix of masonry and normal 1x4 and 1x2, 1x1 dark bluish gray bricks. And I think it works out okay. Again, when you're viewing this from a kind of the convention, the main view is from the side right here, so it's not a huge deal. I'm not too concerned with this front portion because your main focus is going to be right here and with the actual command center and maybe the cannon. So that's more of a backdrop piece, which is why I did add in some sand green, because it's not something that people are really going to focus on, I don't think, but it's just nice to see it covered up. Just that big gap was kind of annoying, but now it's covered up, so now you actually can see what I envisioned for the kind of base of the tower right here. A few small things to change with how I'm going to attach those side panels right here, the dark bluish gray slopes. Need to work on that a little bit, but the other thing is this thing's getting transported in a car. We have to drive to the convention, so that means everything gets kind of torn down here and placed into bins and bubble wrapped and all this stuff. So that stuff isn't exactly lined up yet because I'm gonna have to redo it at the convention regardless. So that might be why it seems like I'm blowing through a lot of things. You know, some of these smaller things where they don't line up properly is because I'm gonna have to fix it at the convention anyways because I have to take a lot of this apart to transport it. But here is the tower. Now that the front side is complete, the only thing we have left to do is that giant panel on the back side. So that's another struggle I got to figure out. But one step at a time here. That's how these MOCs get built, and that's how they get finished. So now I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the command center, what I've done with that, and then we'll be able to attach it on the top of this tower, and we'll see what it looks like. And here we are, guys. The control center has been placed on top of the tower, and this is what we are looking at. It is very exciting to see this thing on top of this base tower that I built, and it's almost hard to get it all in frame, it's so large, but the thing I'm most excited about, especially from this side angle right here, is that little overlap or overhang on the right side where the control center actually overhangs on top of the base of the tower. That was the one characteristic that I really wanted to make sure I got right, was it's pretty noticeable that how the curve kind of goes on the tower and how the top of the command center actually overhangs on the bottom of the tower. So I'm really happy about that angle. That was the big thing that I wanted to make sure I got correct. So this is what we're looking at from this angle. I gotta say, I'm very happy with it. There are a few things, of course, that still need to be changed, like I mentioned with those inverted slopes right there. There's also some gaps that I'll show you from the front side that I need to build up a little bit more, and then I need to complete the back side of the tower because it's still open. But that'll be all for the finale. I just wanted to make sure to get this, you know, the bulk of the tower complete before the finale. So I don't know, it's just kind of, it's cool to finally see this. Again, something that I've always dreamed of doing since I was a kid was building Muunilinst, and seeing this iconic tower in the MOC that I've built and spent, you know, over a year on now. It's just really exciting, and I think the scale is good. Of course, I would love for it to be taller, but I think for what I was able to do with the pieces I have, this scale is pretty good when you can see the minifigs down there for perspective. And yeah, so look at that, guys. The tower for Muunilinst is, I would say, about 95% complete. Just a few small things to change, but the shape is down, and it's definitely, like, right now it could go to the convention, which is good. I just need to add a few more things in the finale to make it more complete. But look at that, the Muunilinst tower. And we'll swing around here to the front. This is the only thing that I'm not very happy with. Well, you can see the gap that I was speaking of that I need to fill in there, but in my opinion, the front of the tower is pretty plain and not as exciting compared to the side of the tower. I just think it's kind of bland and it isn't as cool looking. Like, when you look at it from the side, it's really like, yeah, that's the Muunilinst tower, and it looks really good. But just from this front side, it's definitely cool to see it kind of towering over the rest of the city, and the command center looks great. It's just that big dark gray patch, but I don't really know what else to add right there just because I'm kind of out of other pieces to use. I don't think I have enough room to do battle damage, so I just kind of had to make it all gray. Hopefully it looks okay. I think that's the only part, you know, in comparison to the rest of the tower that I'm not as big of a fan of, is this kind of front section where it's just kind of plain dark gray. I don't really know what to add there to make it better. Maybe I should add in some sand green, but I don't know if the sand green will mix well with the dark red. I'm not sure. Maybe it's okay as it is, just with the dark gray, and maybe once I fill in that gap, it'll end up looking just fine. But I think in comparison to the side of the building, or the side of the tower, the front doesn't look as good. But I do like that you can see the command center with the droids up there, and I like how they can kind of tower over and look out throughout the whole battlefield. I do think that looks pretty good, and that will allow for some pretty awesome angles for pictures and stuff once I get around to doing that from, like, minifigures looking down and up at the tower, especially even shots like this. I just think there's going to be a lot of cool angles to get for the Muunilinst tower here. But that's pretty much it, guys. That is my progress for this episode. Again, I would love to have it a little bit more complete, but I'm going to save that for the finale once I get some more pieces in and fill in some of those remaining gaps. Right under there, you can see a gap right there, and then I need to fill in the backside because that's still empty. But the big thing I wanted to get done was making sure that most of it was complete and that I got the shape down. The shape was the big thing, and I'm really, really happy with the shape. So there's the Muunilinst tower as I have it right now, and now we can flow and go right into the finale and finish this thing up, as well as finish up a few other things. So thank you guys so much for watching, and very happy with the progress on this tower. Of course, if you have any feedback, make sure to leave it in the comment section, although by the time this comes out, I might be out of time to make any significant changes, so we're getting really close to the end here, which is unfortunate. I wish I would have allowed myself more time to make this thing a little more polished, but I think it's looking pretty good. So that's about it, and let's go ahead and move on to the outro. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you did enjoy. Here's a little bit of a different outro. Normally I do close-ups on some figures, but I decided to do one final wide shot here for the episode of the full tower complete and built. And if you stuck around, I actually did end up getting those dark bluish gray slopes in, so I did replace those and put those on the top of the command center, so it is now all complete with the correct colors. So here's a little bit of a wide shot to close things out, and the next episode for Muunilinst will be the finale, so stay tuned for that. I'm going to touch up a few things here and there, polish the mock off, and of course talk about figures, and I'm going to do kind of a mini slideshow and cinematic. I'm going to set up some figures and the speeder bikes, kind of play around with those a little bit and get a nice little cinematic going, and then prepare to take it down and take it to Brickworld Chicago 2022. So going to be a very exciting finale, and I'm excited to get to work on it. But here is the tower and the control center all together now with the cannon on the Muunilinst MOC. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, and as always, leave your feedback in the comment section below. Hope you guys have a great day, and may the force be with you always.